right, let's jump over to the Big Ten West Division. I'm going to start off with Wisconsin Badgers. Boy, Gary Anderson came in as the new coach last year with a reputation of an offensive wizard, and boy, he certainly delivered. The Badgers were 9-4 straight up, 6-2 in the conference, and 9-3-1 against the spread. And they're also 8-5 under the total. No, the offense wasn't a problem. It was the defense that was exceptional. First of all, the offense under him averaged 34.8 points per game. That was 28th in the country. Tremendous balance. 283.8 yards rushing per game. That was 8th in the country. And 197 yards passing to boot. You got 4 starters back on the offensive line, so the key is going to be to find some of the playmakers, because overall they have 5 starters returning on offense, just 3 on defense. Junior quarterback Joel Stave is in the mix, 22 touchdowns, 13 interceptions, 62% completions, but he has had a history of shoulder problems. They can rely on junior running back Melvin Gordon. This guy had 1,609 yards rushing, 7.8 yards per carry to go along with his 12 touchdowns. So the backfield looks very strong. Wide receiver, though, you have to wonder if this passing game is going to improve at all from their 93rd ranking a year ago, because they're very inexperienced. They got talent with Kenzel Doe, Jordan Frederick, and Alex Erickson, but those 5 of their top guys returning only caught 28 passes last year. And boy, was this defense absolutely rock solid last year. 6th in the nation in points allowed, just 16.3 points per game. The Badger defense does lose their best guys up front, so it's the linebacker core that appears to be in much better shape than the defensive line. At linebacker, you had Vince Beagle returning. He played in 13 games, only 2 starts though, but still Derek Landish and Marcus Trotter are back. Secondary does have some new faces, but they have junior cornerback Sojourn Shelton is returning, and he was terrific on the nation's 17th ranked pass defense last year. Wisconsin's schedule, very first game is going to be a big one. They're going to be opening against LSU, and it's going to be at a neutral site, Reliant Stadium in Houston, Texas. But after that, it's really not that hard a schedule for the Badgers. They're going to be hosting Nebraska, at Northwestern, and Iowa. And keep in mind, Wisconsin has really dominated at home the last 10 years, both straight up and against the spread. 63-8 straight up, 40-25 against the spread the last year. I see this team winning, last 10 years, I see this team winning 9 to 10 wins again, and might be another good shot under the total with this ground game and very strong defense. All right, Jeff, how about Nebraska? Can the Huskers give the Badgers a run at all?
Yeah, they were last year 9-4, 7-6 against the spread. They returned 5 offense, 7 on defense. Biggest question mark is quarterback here. In the spring game, didn't make the decision making any easier. Sophomore Tommy Armstrong was picked off on the first play of the game. Freshman Zach Darlington was 3 of 11 with 1 interception. The other 2 guys were decent. John Stanton, 8 of 12 with 2 TDs, and sophomore Riker Fife, 9 of 12, 89 yards, 1 TD. The big thing here is running back Mirabella is back. He ran for nearly 1,700 yards last year, but only 1 starter returns on the offensive line. On defensive end, Randy Gregory, one of the best in the country. The front 7 on defense looks solid, but you have to wonder about a team that gave up 38 points versus Iowa last year, 41 against Michigan State, which had a very average offense, 34 against Minnesota, 41 at home against UCLA. So they need a big improvement there on defense. Schedule, they start out with 2 gimmies versus Florida, Atlanta, and McNeese State, but then they go to Fresno State. The thing about the schedule was the toughest opponents are on the road, the easier ones are at home. But they get Michigan State, Northwestern, Wisconsin, Iowa, all on the road. So with that tough road schedule plus the quarterback situation, I don't see Nebraska doing better than 8-4 this year, Jim.
Okay, I'll take a look at the Iowa Hawkeyes. This was a team that had a lot of question marks a year ago. 2 years ago, they were 4-8, so last year was a bounce-back season. And the very young team impressed for Kirk Ferentz, going 8-5 straight up, 8-5 against the spread. They were 5-3 in the Big Ten. And he's got 8 starters returning on offense, 5 on defense. The offense, didn't put up a lot of yards rushing and passing, but they were actually better than what the yards suggest. First of all, they were 197 yards passing. That was 93rd in the nation. 180 yards rushing was 50th, but it was good enough to put up 26.3 points per game. And the reason is they had a young quarterback, a sophomore in Jake Rudock last year. And he got better as the year went along, just like the entire offense. He finished with 18 touchdowns, 13 picks. Did go through some growing pains early on, but overall he was pretty good. 59% completions. He's a mobile guy who ran for 218 yards, and he showed quite a bit of improvement. The foundation of this offense is still the ground game, and that's going to be great this year for the Hawkeyes. 3 offensive line starters returning, led by the senior left tackle, Brendan Scherf. He was first team all Big Ten. And the backfield is loaded. Senior Mark Weisman is back. He had 975 yards rushing, 4.3 yards per carry. And another senior in Damon Bullock, a workhorse with 467 yards, 6.5 yards per carry. And to boot, their best wide receiver is back as senior wide receiver Cavante Martin Manley, only 388 yards, but he is a very reliable veteran. So this offense should be better. And then the defense last year, it might surprise people that Iowa gave up 18.9 points per game. That was ninth best in the whole country. Now, they do lose 3 senior linebackers, but overall, it's pretty good defense because 3 starters return on the defensive line. Senior nose tackle Carl Davis was second all Big Ten. You got 2 of 4 starters back in the secondary, led by senior safety John Loudermilk. So this is a great defense for Kirk Ferentz last year, and they look just as strong. The schedule, you got 8 of 13 opponents were in a bowl last year, but still you got 3 home games to start the year. The big rivalry game is against Iowa State September 13th, but after that they play 5 of 7 games away, so it's a grueling road stretch after those first 3 games. And overall, though, it's a rather favorable schedule because they're not going to play Michigan or Ohio State, Michigan State, or Penn State. They do get Nebraska and Wisconsin. Both those games are at Kinnick Stadium. So this is going to be a winning season and another bowl for Iowa. And I wouldn't be surprised with the defense being great and them looking at a run-oriented offense for Iowa to go under the total more times than they don't. All right, how about the Northwestern Wildcats, Jeff? How do they look for 2014?
Well, if you believe in the law of averages, it certainly applies to Northwestern. 2 years ago, they were 12-1 against the spread. Last year, 3-9 against the spread. Just about everything they could think of went wrong last year. They started out 4-0, then they lost a heartbreaker to Ohio State, and they never recovered. At the end of the season, on a 1-7 straight up run, and a 1-9 against the spread run. Just so many, everything that could go wrong went wrong. They lost 2 overtime games versus Iowa and Michigan, 2 more games to Minnesota and Nebraska, each by a field goal. They finally managed to win a game in the finale at Illinois, 37-34. So if you believe in that, things turn around. This year should be a good year for Northwestern because they can't get much worse than last year as far as luck goes. The good news is 15 starters are back, 8 offense, 7 defense. Senior quarterback Trevor Siemian, who shared time last year at quarterback, would be the starter. He's had 11 TDs last year with 9 interceptions, completed nearly 60% of his passes. Fifth-year running back Vendrick Marcus back. He had last year he had an ankle injury, but 2 years ago he ran for 1,366 yards, averaging 6 yards per carry. The entire offensive line returned, so things look good on that side of the ball. Even though 7 starters return on defense, it's going to have to be much improved because last year Northwestern allowed 423 yards per game. The schedule, the first 3 games are all at home versus Cal, Northern Illinois, Western Illinois. They get Wisconsin, Nebraska, Michigan at home, Penn State, Iowa, Notre Dame on the road. I would say a 7-5 season would be in the offing for Northwestern this year.
I think Minnesota Gophers are going to take a little bit of a step back. They certainly overachieved last year for Jerry Kill, 8-5 record, just 4-4 in the conference, and they covered games 9-4 against the spread. But there are some concerns for 2014. 5 starters back on offense, 5 on defense. They did lose their last 3 games. And the offense was one-dimensional. They ranked 115th in the nation in passing with 148 yards per game. But they were 37th in rushing, 195 per game. And they need to find a quarterback. You got 6'4" sophomore quarterback Mitch Leidner is back, but just 619 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick. He has the early edge after quarterback Philip Nelson. He decided to transfer, and he was okay last year with 9 touchdowns and 6 picks. And Leidner did get to play in the bowl game, but it was a loss to Syracuse, 21-17, and he wasn't very good. 205 yards. I'm sorry, no, he was good. 2 touchdowns and no picks, 205 yards passing. And he also was second on the team in rushing. So he's a good mobile quarterback, despite his limited experience with 407 yards rushing, 4 yards per carry. And then you got the freshman Dominic Rodney McKenzie coming in and Chris Stevler. These are 2 quarterbacks who may see some time behind center or give him a run. And then you got senior running back Dave Cobb. He had 1,202 yards rushing last year, 5.1 yards per carry. So it's going to be a ground-oriented attack again, although they do have a very talented wide receiver in 6'4" sophomore Max Williams. He had 417 yards as a freshman. The defense certainly overachieved last year, 22 points per game. That was 25th in the country. They ranked 4th in the Big Ten in points allowed, but they do have some key personnel losses. And after losing their first 2 games in the conference last year, They won 4 in a row and played very well. A tribute to the coaching staff. They beat Penn State 24-10. They had that big victory over Nebraska 34-23. It's a very difficult road slate for 2014. They got trips to Nebraska, Wisconsin, Michigan, and TCU. Remember that Michigan game? They got smoked by Michigan last year, 42-13. So all in all, I think it's going to be a team, I can't see them getting 8 wins, so closer to 500, maybe taking a step back from Minnesota. Speaking of taking the steps, what about Purdue, Jeff? Are they ready to take any steps forward?
Well, they can't go much further backward. Last year, 1-11 straight up, 3-8-1 against the spread. Coach Darrell Hazo had a rude awakening going to the Big Ten. He did a great job at Kent State, but he's a year or two away from rebuilding this program. Last year, they were last in the country, 14.9 points per game, 67 yards rushing per game. They lose 2 of the best offensive linemen this year. If they're looking for an improvement in offense, the spring game was not a good sign. The final score was 12-7, and I doubt it was because of a great defense either.
Was it in the pouring rain?
No, I think the weather was fine. It was brilliant sunshine, I think it was. Danny Etling, Austin Appleby, and freshman David Blau will compete at quarterback. Blau had the best spring game. It was 13 of 20, 147 yards and a TD. Running back Akeem Hunt, D'Angelo and Yancey, they're back, and Cameron Posey returns at wide receiver. They already, let's see, what I was going to say. Oh, yeah, I was going to say their defense last year, they returned several starters, but from that team, it could be could be a bad thing. So we just have to wait and see in this team. They just right now, it doesn't look good for Purdue. The schedule started out with 2 MAC opponents, Western Michigan and Central Michigan, plus they get FCS team, Southern Illinois. This team will probably they could eke out 4 wins, but that would be a stretch. But this team is at least a year or two away from being a contender here, John.
Okay, well, Illinois has been eking out some wins. 2 years ago, they were just 2-10, but they improved to 4-8 last year under Tim Beckman, and the pressure is kind of on him to produce. They were 6-6 against the spread, and the offense was actually very good for Illinois, and they got 6 starters back on offense and 9 on defense. So if they're going to make a run, this would be the year to do it. The offense averaged almost 30 points per game, 22nd in the country in passing with 287 yards. 0.7 yards per game, and the ground game chipped in 139. Quarterback, though, is up in the air. If you remember Wes Lunt, he was the quarterback at Oklahoma State 2 years ago. He's a 6'5" sophomore. He had a good spring when he transferred out, and when he was a freshman at Oklahoma State, he did get some time to play for the Cowboys 2 years ago because of injuries, and he was average 6 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. They also have quarterback Riley O'Toole and a dual-threat sophomore quarterback in Aaron Bailey vying for time behind center. They do have a very good backfield in the junior running back Josh Ferguson. This kid had 779 yards rushing, 5.5 yards per carry, and he's not alone. You got senior Donovan Young, who chipped in 376 yards. You throw in 3 offensive line starters back, and the Illini running game should help these young new quarterbacks. The wide receivers, though, are thin with Geronimo Allison and Mike Dudek stepping in. And what Coach Beckman did is he really went the JUCO route to try and help the wide receivers and to try and help this defense. And the defense was awful last year, 35.4 points per game, ranked 106th in the nation. That's their big downfall. They were 11th in the conference in yards allowed. And what happened is they had only 14 sacks for the entire season. That ranked 114th in the country. So they couldn't get any pressure on opposing quarterbacks, and that allowed quarterbacks to just pick apart a very young secondary. Good news is the entire secondary returns, but it's difficult to see how they're going to get some pass rush. In Big Ten play, Illinois gave up 481.5 yards per game, including over 238 yards rushing per game. So they couldn't stop the run or the pass. And one of the JUCO players that are coming in are Jawahar Ward. This kid is 6'7", 285-pound defensive end out of New York. So in theory, he could help the pass rush, but it is a pass rush that is badly needed. Also, the young linebacker in T.J. Neal had a very good spring. So there are some pieces that show the Illinois defense could improve. But overall, it looks like a better offense than defense, probably a team to look at over the total. And I find going over 5 wins and being bowl eligible difficult based on all of their defensive weaknesses. All right, make sure you check out other previews that we have in college football at jimfeist.com. You want to go there for stats, free picks, articles, and podcasts, as well as more college football previews. And Jeff and I will see you next time with more previews right here at jimfeist.com. See you then.